They say silence is peace, but in the town of Black Hollow, silence was a curse. It wasn't always this way. Before 1993, the town was just another quiet spot nestled between dead woods and forgotten roads in the north of Maine. Then came the children. Or maybe they were always there waiting. This story is from a man named Caleb Whitmore. He moved to Black Hollow with his pregnant wife, Elise, in early spring of 1993. They were both school teachers, looking for a slower life to raise their family. Caleb had found a job as the new history teacher at the only high school in town, and Elise was planning to take a break until after the baby was born. They rented an old colonial-style house near the edge of the woods, far enough from town to feel peaceful, but close enough to not be isolated, or so they thought. From the beginning, something felt off. The neighbors were distant. The local kids seemed strange, almost robotic. They would stare without blinking, follow Caleb with their eyes but never smile or wave. Elise said she had dreams every night about kids singing outside their window. Caleb brushed it off. New home jitters. Pregnancy anxiety. He didn't believe in ghost stories. One night, around 3 weeks after moving in, Caleb woke to Elise sitting up in bed whispering something. He leaned over and asked what was wrong, and she turned to him with eyes wide open and said, "They're watching." Caleb froze. He followed her gaze to the window. There was no one there, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had just ducked out of view. When he asked her the next morning, Elise claimed she didn't remember anything. At school, Caleb started noticing more odd behavior. The students didn't laugh, didn't talk much unless spoken to. Some had old bruises on their arms and legs. One boy named Jacob used to draw symbols on his desk over and over. Spirals, triangles with eyes in the center, and children with no faces. When Caleb asked him about the drawings, Jacob whispered, "They come when you dream." By the second month, things got worse. Elise's dreams became violent. She screamed in her sleep, clawed at Caleb's arms, saying, "Get them away from me." Caleb began sleeping with the lights on. The air in the house always felt cold. He found small muddy footprints in the hallway one morning, but there had been no rain for days. Elise stopped going outside entirely. She said she felt them circling the house. Caleb asked who they were, but she wouldn't say. One evening, Caleb received a phone call from the principal asking if he had seen Jacob. The boy hadn't shown up for school or gone home the night before. Police found his bike near the old well behind the school, but no sign of the boy. It was the third missing child in 2 months. The town kept quiet about it. No flyers, no news. Just silence. That night, Caleb went through the town records, curious about the well. What he found chilled him. In 1946, 6 children from the town orphanage went missing. Locals believed they had fallen into the well during a game. When rescuers pulled them out days later, their bodies were missing eyes and tongues. No one was ever charged. After that, the well was boarded up, but strange disappearances continued every few decades. Caleb wanted to leave, but Elise refused. She was now 7 months pregnant and said the children wouldn't let her go. That night, Caleb heard whispering through the walls, voices of children chanting something in a language he didn't understand. The power went out, and the house plunged into darkness. In the pitch black, Elise began laughing, not her usual laugh, but something guttural and sharp. Caleb lit a candle and found her sitting in the nursery, rocking in a chair. Her eyes were rolled back. He called a doctor, but by the time help arrived, Elise was back to normal, confused and frightened. The doctor suggested stress. Caleb knew better. The next day, he went into town and confronted an old man named Harold, the town librarian. Harold was one of the only people who would speak honestly. He told Caleb about the legend, how the children who died in the well never really left. Their souls became twisted and bound to the land. They fed on fear, grew stronger with time. And once every generation, they tried to be reborn. They need a mother, Harold said, and Elise is just the vessel they've been waiting for. Caleb rushed home, but Elise was gone. The front door was open. Muddy footprints led from the nursery into the woods. He followed them, flashlight trembling in his hand. The woods were dead silent, no birds, no wind. Just the sound of soft giggling in the distance. He found her near the old well, standing perfectly still. Around her were children, dozens of them, pale, with black eyes and stitched mouths. They weren't alive, but they weren't fully dead either. Elise turned to Caleb and said, "They chose me." The children began to hum, a low haunting melody that felt like it came from inside Caleb's head. He stepped back, but his feet felt frozen. The ground near the well cracked open slightly, revealing a dark void beneath. The children reached toward Elise, placing their hands on her belly. She didn't resist. She smiled. And then everything went black. Caleb woke up 2 days later in a hospital bed. He was found unconscious in the woods by a hunter. No sign of Elise, no footprints, no children. The house was empty. The well was sealed with new concrete. The town denied everything. He never found her again. Caleb never left Black Hollow. Even though every bone in his body told him to run, something kept him tethered to that cursed town. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was madness. But deep down, he knew Elise was still out there. Somewhere between the soil and shadows. After the hospital released him, he returned to the house. It had been cleaned out. The nursery was bare, the furniture gone. It was like no one had ever lived there. The townsfolk avoided him now. Students were transferred. His job at the school disappeared quietly. There were no police reports, no official record of Elise's disappearance. Black Hollow had swallowed her whole and spat Caleb back out as a ghost of who he once was. He moved into a small, moldy apartment above the old pharmacy. Days became months. He barely ate. He didn't sleep much. When he did, he dreamed of Elise. Not the Elise he remembered, but something darker. She would stand in the woods, humming lullabies in reverse, her belly glowing faintly. The children would be behind her, whispering, grinning, eyes like black oil. In one dream, she opened her mouth and a swarm of moths flew out. In early autumn, a letter arrived. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a black and white picture of Elise, standing in the middle of a crowd of children, her face blank. The children's faces distorted, smeared like the film had melted. Scribbled on the back in childlike handwriting were 3 words, "We are waiting." Caleb started investigating. He visited the town's library again. Harold was gone. Retired, they said. The new librarian, a young woman named Marla, didn't know anything, but Caleb dug deeper into archived newspapers, old school files, orphanage logs. Patterns began to form. Every 27 years, 7 children went missing, always 7, always around the woods, always in fall. No one ever talked about them again. He found a diary from 1945 belonging to a girl named Ruth Wilder. She was a resident at the Black Hollow orphanage. Her final entry read, "They sing at night. We don't sleep. Miss Carter says not to. Answer when they knock, but Jamie did. Now he's gone. They say the well is empty, but I hear the splashes." A month after that, Ruth vanished. There was no mention of her afterward. Caleb became obsessed. He mapped the disappearances, marked timelines. He found strange drawings behind torn wallpaper at the house, sigils carved in chalk beneath the floorboards, circles of salt disturbed by small barefoot prints. Someone had been trying to protect the place or trap something in. Then came Halloween night. Caleb sat by his window watching the empty street. No trick-or-treaters in Black Hollow, just cold wind and hollowed trees. Then he heard it, faint humming. A child's lullaby drifting from the woods. He grabbed his flashlight and coat, heart pounding, and walked toward the sound. The woods were colder than usual, thick with fog that clung to the ground like breath. The further he walked, the more distorted the trees looked, gnarled, warped, wrong. He found another footprint, then another, child-sized, bare. And then he saw her, Elise. She was standing in the exact spot by the well where he last saw her. Her hair was longer now, tangled and grey. Her skin was pale, but her eyes, they were not her own. They were completely white, almost glowing. She smiled when she saw him. "Caleb," she said, her voice flat. "You came home." He took a step forward, hands trembling. "Elise, what happened to you?" "They chose me," she whispered. "I didn't fight it." Behind her, the children began to emerge from the trees, dozens of them, all barefoot, wearing old-fashioned clothes, faces blank. They encircled him. No sound, just breathing. Caleb turned to run, but the woods twisted around him. Every direction was wrong. Every path led back to the well. Then one of the children stepped forward, a little girl with dark hair and no eyes. She held out a small wooden box. Inside it was a piece of cloth, Elise's scarf, soaked in something black and sticky. And beneath it, a finger, tiny, newborn. Caleb dropped to his knees. "What do you want?" he sobbed. The children began to hum again. Elise crouched beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "They're lonely," she said. "They want a father." The next thing he remembered was waking up in his apartment, soaked in sweat, feet muddy, clothes torn. He had no idea how he got back. But the box was on his kitchen table. He didn't open it. After that night, things changed. The shadows in his apartment moved on their own. He began seeing children in reflections, behind him in mirrors, in puddles, even in his shadow. They never spoke. They just watched. He tried to leave the town, packed a bag, bought a bus ticket. But every road out of Black Hollow seemed to loop back in. GPS glitched, signs disappeared. He drove for hours and ended up back at the town square. The gas station clerk gave him a look and said, "Happens to everyone. Best just accept it." Caleb began to lose time. He'd wake up standing in the woods with no memory of how he got there. Once he woke up at the edge of the well, holding a shovel. There were fresh dig marks in the dirt. Then came the tapes. VHS tapes left outside, his door unmarked. When he played them, they showed footage of children, filmed in black and white, dancing in a circle around the well. Elise stood in the background, chanting in a strange tongue. In one tape, Caleb saw himself among them. Eyes closed, humming, smiling, but he had no memory of it. He smashed the tapes, didn't matter. More arrived the next day. Caleb decided to burn the house down, the one where it all started. He doused it in gasoline, lit the match, and watched it burn. Flames licked the sky. He felt relief. But when he returned the next morning, the house was untouched. No signs of fire. Still standing like nothing had ever happened. The town didn't acknowledge it. He began hearing voices through the walls again, children giggling, whispering his name. Sometimes, Elise would appear at the foot of his bed, holding a baby wrapped in black cloth. She'd say hello to your son." Caleb never looked. One day he found a note under his pillow. "The 7th child is almost ready." That night, the well called to him. He walked into the woods, unable to resist. He stood at the edge and saw something crawling out. Not Elise, not a child. Something older. A creature made of bones and branches, with a child's face stitched to its head. It whispered in his voice, "Come home." He jumped back, but the ground beneath him crumbled. He fell into the darkness. He expected to hit water, but he landed on soft soil. Below the well was a massive cavern. Torches lit the walls, strange symbols etched into the stone. The children were there watching. In the center was Elise standing over an altar. On the altar was a baby, not human. Its skin was translucent. It had no eyes. It pulsed like a heart. "They're ready," Elise said. One final step. Caleb screamed and rushed forward. The children didn't move. He reached the altar and looked down at the thing on it. It opened its mouth and said, "Daddy." Everything went black. Caleb woke up in the middle of town, surrounded by police. They said he'd been missing for a week. They found him at the old orphanage ruins, cradling a bundle of stones wrapped in a blanket, rocking back and forth, singing. He was institutionalized. They said he lost his mind after his wife's disappearance. He was diagnosed with acute trauma, psychosis. They never found Elise or the well. The woods were bulldozed, a shopping center was built over them. But Caleb knew. He still sees the children in the corners of his room, still hears them through the vents. And every year on Halloween he feels Elise's hand in his. They never left, and now they're waiting again, because the cycle always repeats, and the seventh child is still hungry.